This video is going to be the air sign readings. So that's going to be Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. The cards that I'm going to be using for the readings today, I'm going to be using my Egyptian tarot deck. That's the first deck that I ever had that my mom bought for me when I was like 9 or 10. So I learned how to read with this deck. And it actually is a very unique deck in that the correspondences are very different from like the Golden Dawn correspondences. So for example, Wheel of Fortune is Pluto in Scorpio instead of Jupiter energy. Additionally, the minor arcana of this deck is unsuited, but rather, you can see this is number 58. The minor arcana is more like an archetypal deck. So that makes it very interesting to use. To clarify, each sign's reading, I'm going to be using my Cards Against Humanity. And those of you who are familiar with the channel probably know that I have taken out some of the cards that I find a little bit too offensive or things that I don't agree with. So, hopefully it'll still be quite YouTube safe. And then finally, this is a piece of mica from Simi Valley. You can see it's really sparkly and shiny. We went out fossil hunting there with a friend and found lots of really neat fossils and lots of beautiful shiny chunks of mica. So I'm going to be using this over on the members side of the channel to do crystal scrying. If that interests you, you're cordially invited. But your presence here on the channel is greatly appreciated in whatever form it takes. So I am going to start by shuffling the cards, and we're going to do the reading for Gemini first. So Gemini, if you would like, go ahead and set your intention for the reading. Allow any associated thoughts or ideas to rise up to the forefront of your mind, and wait there patiently while I shuffle the cards. Now, there might be anxiety or stress or other less positive emotions. Associated with that idea. If that is is the case, I invite you to gently breathe through that energy. As you inhale, draw in divine source energy along with all of those delicious, delicious oxygen molecules. Allow that oxygen to infiltrate every one of your cells and make its release the electron to make its way through the electron transport chain. This is going to have the effect of just pushing all of that lower vibrational energies that you're ready to get rid of. It's going to push it right through the electron transport chain. We're going to get to that final CO2 molecule, and you're just going to release everything with your breath, and that energy will return to source and it will be transmuted. So there's a lot, or quite a few, major arcana cards coming out in your reading. I'm going to pull some cards against humanity. And I'm going to put your timestamps. Okay, so let's get started. Here in the past, Gemini, we have the evolution card. This is a card associated with the planet Venus. And we have a priest here performing the opening of the mouth ceremony on this deceased, the Osiris here. We see the Ba flying overhead, so the spirit is still supervising this activity. And we have the hieroglyph for the mouth also here at the top, which is R sound. So the opening of the mouth ceremony wasn't just performed on deceased people, it's also performed on statuary for the temple so that the god spirits could enter the statues. Additionally, I use a slightly modified opening of the mouth ritual when I do anything with a spirit board, because you can use it to seal the board to a specific deity. So what we're doing is, after the transformation has occurred, we are stepping into that new form. We are breathing life into that new form. This is slightly different from transformation, of course, in that this kind of comes as the next step. This is a kind of leveling up, so you could also see it as similar to the judgment card, in that you are ascending to the next stage. You're taking on a new form. This would have been something that occurred for you in the past, Gemini. And while you are now occupying that new form, that particular phase of your existence has ended, and you're ready to move on from that energy, move forward. Here in the place of the significator, we have a very interesting combination of cards. So we have the immortality card, which is kind of like the death card in this deck, except that here the immortality card is associated with Mercury in your sign of Gemini instead of the typical scorpionic energies. We see this figure cutting wheat, and in fact, the sheaf that has been cut is now turning green and growing anew. We see little shoots coming up as well. That renewal of spirit. So, for you, Gemini, you are now entering into either you have found a way to build your own legacy to leave behind after coming through this period of evolution. This new form might be much more robust than any of your previous incarnations. You might have found a way to become much more established in whatever it is you're doing. Mercury in Gemini is a creativity around ideas and communication. So this would be a very third house type of energy. And in fact, that is kind of what guarantees our immortality, is not just our legacy, but the way that people around us remember us. I don't mean to speak of you as though you are dead. I think your reputation at this time is greatly expanding. However, there is still some delay, perhaps, associated with this, because what we have here is the Hanged Man. And the Hanged Man in this deck is associated with Moon in Taurus. There's a seeking out of comfort, and that is why there is an inability to move forward. This could also signify for you at this particular time, Gemini, because this is the crossing energy, that while everyone else is kind of stuck in their own hamster wheel, in their own trying to achieve that comfort, that you are actually evolving and moving forward. So that's a good energy for you. However, there are certain limitations when the environment around you is not conducive to that change. So let's see how that might affect things. Down here in the Imam Silai, we're looking at the foundations upon which future events will be built. And the card we have there is the Empress. This is the divine passive energy. It's a very receptive energy. In this particular deck, this is Jupiter in Sagittarius. So a very fertile expansion and growth. The Empress can be a little bit like the Queen of Pentacles, She is different from the Weaver energy in this deck, in that the Weaver is somebody who is employed, and that is how they make their living. The Empress does not need to work. She is provided for. You can see this vulture coming into her, representing that things are brought to the Empress. So it's not necessarily that you have to exhibit feminine energies to be in that Empress energy. It can just mean that things at this time, opportunities are coming to you, things are being brought to you, and it is by merit of your magnetism, perhaps because of this transformation that has taken place. From your perspective on the situation, Gemini, we have this card, Solitude. And this card is Neptunian energy, so a higher octave of the moon energy, higher octave of lunar energy, also indicative of a personal relationship with the higher power. This figure could be in the Duat. We see this symbol here, which is the hieroglyph for the underworld. They are under a starry sky here, wearing some kind of a lotus headdress, and perhaps in a place of meditation. The most important part being that they are solitary. So this could be vibrationally very similar to the Hermit card, especially because we do see that Neptunian energy where there's an implication of communion with the higher power. However, this solitude in the reverse, in the current situation for you, Gemini, you might feel like you don't have enough time to yourself. You may feel like your solitude is disrupted. There could even be a kind of loneliness associated with this, that you might be surrounded by people, but that they don't really understand what you are going through, and therefore it makes you feel lonely. It's only a possibility, however, not necessarily the case for everyone. It is, after all, a general read. From an outside person's perspective, looking in on the situation, we have this card of delusion. We have down here the set beast. This is also Neptunian energy, but here we're looking at the obscurity factor of Neptune. We have a sistrum up here, the instrument of Hathor. We have this dancer, this court dancer, who's quite intoxicated and is kind of stumbling around. So others around you at this time may not recognize your transformation for what it is. They may see these things as delusions on your part and be very stuck in their own mindset about things. As we see, sorry, I kind of knocked the microphone, as we see with that Hanged Man energy. Here in the future for you, Gemini, we have lots of Neptune energy coming out in your reading this week, Gemini, with this particular deck. So that would imply a strong communion with the higher power at this time. things might be a little bit unclear. Neptune is strongly associated with water energy. So if you have water signs prominently featured in your chart, you might want to look at those. Any Pisces energies. This particular card in the future, there is a potential for you to take part in some kind of innovation. Up here at the top, we have the figure of Khnum, who was the potter god, said to have thrown the entire world on his potter's wheel. We have this figure walking through the doorway, holding the wasp's scepter of power. So this is kind of like Wand's energy, wherever you see the wasp scepter, that it has to do with sovereignty and power, especially of the self. And most of the figures in this deck, you will also see them holding the Ankh, which is a symbol of life. There's a little bit of danger in innovation too. Here the figure perhaps is protected by the Uraeus serpent as they walk through this threshold into something new. It's interesting that this correspondence is Neptune and not Uranus. I would have taken this to be more of a Uranus card myself with my own correspondences, but here it's being shown as a Neptunian card, perhaps because of that factor of the unknown and the part of innovation that comes from divine intervention. Because this card is reversed in the future, there is the potential that there will be an innovation moving forward, but there might be something that needs to happen before that can occur. So we can look some more into some of these other things and see what might help you. It might be a change of environment. If the people around you are kind of stuck, you might need to surround yourself with different people. Here in the area of your hopes and fears, Gemini, we have this card about magnificence. And this is governed by your ruling planet of Mercury. We do see possibly communication going on. There's not any implication that this is some kind of business meeting. These two figures are very nicely dressed. They're eating a beautiful banquet. It is purely about beautiful things being present in your life. Living the good life, basically. And where we have this card in the reverse, in your hopes and fears, and where this is in opposition to that card about solitude in the reverse, in your current perspective, this really tells me that the people with whom you have surrounded yourself at this particular time don't necessarily share your vision and aren't quite on the same vibrational wavelength that you are at this time, Gemini. Not that you need to cast these people aside, but you do need to be making room and time for people who are a better vibrational fit for you and for the future that you wish to bring in for yourself. Here in the midheaven, this is going to be the result of what we see down here in the Imam Silai with this very receptive Empress energy, that good things are coming in for you at this time. We have the card of the unexpected. Now, this is Mars energy. We do have another Mars card coming out in your final outcome. Now, this is the figure of Mayet up here at the top, the goddess of truth. I'm not entirely sure why she is depicted with this beard, but that does imply some ambiguity in the truth of situations. Likewise, this figure is facing backward. Facing backward. I do believe that in the 42 Confessions, one of the judges is facing backward, or there's a backward strider. There's implications to that of people having hindsight about their past deeds. So at this time, those past deeds might be very clear. And in some ways, because we have this figure looking backward and the archer is pointing the arrow the same way as that depiction of Mayet is looking. Beneath the feet, we have the danger of being stung by a scorpion. We see that here, right in the heel, perhaps, although that's not how scorpions sting, but there's kind of like these rays coming out, showing that danger being very present underfoot, even though the archer is unaware that is taking place. So with this card of the unexpected, it is required of you to take action in a forward direction. However, your conscious thought is going to be misdirected by events of the past. History does, in fact, repeat itself, but it's going to look a little bit different every time. And there are always going to be aspects that are forgotten. So we don't think about the gradual slide and the gradual sea changes that take place in our cultural landscape that lead to things like a bundle of sticks tightly tied. That's what I'm going to call it from now on. The F word. We don't think about the lead up to these things and how that looks in different cultural contexts through the ages. When I give you these readings, I might provide situational context for a few different types of situations that could be taking place. But these energies have the potential to play out in a number of different ways. So maybe this is happening for you at school. Maybe it's happening for you within a relationship. Maybe it's happening at work. Maybe it's happening with your family. And along with that is a lot of different contexts that could be interwoven into these things as well. The tarot is merely a barometer, if you will, and less of a, it's definitely not like geomancy, where geomancy, if you want to know, is somebody pregnant, or if there is a certain time frame for something, or the first letter of the thief's name. Geomancy claims to be able to do all of those things. Tarot, I think there are people who use it that way, but it's a much more general barometer of situations overall that allows for greater introspection through the symbolism. So that's what we're talking about here with this card, the unexpected, that your perceptions of the past are going to be the deciding factor as to the actions you take in the future, for better or for worse. And if we look at your past events, we do have this not just a transformation taking place, but an awakening to new possibilities. So the potential for even more new possibilities is here in the future. And it's going to depend on the actions that you take and how. I'm sorry, I hit the microphone again. I'm going to try not to do that. How your perceptions of past and historical situations inform your opinions of what may be coming in the future. The final outcome card for your reading today, Gemini, is purification, and it's showing up in reverse. And we have another Mars card indicating action of some kind. There's going to be forward momentum associated with this. We see this person, in this case, being purified through water. It was called wab, making pure. Was a way of washing things with water. The priests who cleaned the temple were called wab priests. Up here at the top, I believe this is either Ra or Horus the Elder. So not just the purifying energies of water, but the purifying energies of the solar light as well. This is in opposition to where a lot of the people who are in your circles right now believe that you might be deluded about something. And remember that is that Neptunian energy, which can be a little scattered, a little watery. So there is water associated with this card. But remember that Mars is aligned with the element of fire, which is also very purifying. Thus, this could be seen as the final iteration of this transformation you have the potential to undergo. However, in this particular context, the action to be taken is not a total purification. So like I said, I don't think that you need to cut these people out of your life entirely. But what you must do is to make room around you for people who do share your vision. This is not going to be like total cutting off of previous connections. This is more going to be a gradual shift. So while it might have been very sudden for you, and there might have been things about this transformation that happened very quickly, again, this is Mercury in Gemini energy, so that's a very fast-moving energy, that the reintegration of all of these things into your social and cultural environment is going to take a little bit more time and finesse. And so is not going to just be like a purification, but rather focus on the dirty work. I, for example, don't always purify my tools when I get them or consecrate them specifically to me. I like to feel the energy that the item already possesses, because you never know when you might stumble upon something that you wouldn't have otherwise, that you can then integrate into your own energies. And that's kind of what I'm getting here with that purification in the final outcome position, giving us the advice that even though the people around you might think that you're quite deluded and daft, that they might still have valuable advice or help that could be offered. So now we're going to move on to the cards against humanity. And I think these readings might be kind of long today because I got very verbose with that Gemini reading. So the question, and I had gotten this question before, I drink to forget blank. Answer 1. Oh, come on, focus. The entire Mormon Tabernacle Choir. So the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, obviously, can be enjoyed in a secular context, in addition to the religious context, but is very closely tied to the religious organization of the Latter-day Saints. So perhaps there are things about that you might be drinking to forget at this time. I think these cards really complement each other well. That someone else's perspective of the way that you're consuming different intoxicants at this time might be a perception of overuse, even if that's not the case. Answer 2, I drink to forget. Drinking out of the toilet and eating garbage. So, these cards against humanity, I really enjoy using them in the fortune-telling capacity because you can get a lot out of them context-wise. There's actually great chunks of the coffin texts that are dedicated to spells to help you avoid having to eat feces in the afterlife. And this could definitely speak to that kind of apotropaic, and especially in the context of this transformation that you're going through, Gemini, which is not as much of a death, but we've moved past the point of death, and now we're coming into the reincarnation phase, the rebirth phase, the walking through the second threshold. So that there are spiritual and physical matters now which might be kind of on shaky ground for you. Remember, one of the reasons why other people are not taking the same steps that you are at this time is because they are seeking out comfort and stability almost to a fault. And then the third one is, I drink to forget. Lance Armstrong's missing body parts. So this card has come up before about Lance Armstrong. I don't know how many of you remember Lance Armstrong, bicycle guy, basically, an athlete, but somebody who was a cancer survivor, and now they're poking fun at that in this deck of humorous gaming cards. But the cultural context of that reference is quite dated now, such that there might be a lot of cultural context about celebrities and other parts of popular culture that you are trying to expunge from your memory banks at this time, Gemini. So that is going to conclude the Gemini reading for this week. And quite a long one it has been too. If I have to change my battery, I will do that. We're going to move on now to the sign of Libra. Libra, 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 Libra. So, Libra, if you would like, go ahead and set your intention for the reading. Allow any thoughts or ideas associated with that intention to rise up to the forefront of your mind and wait there patiently while I shuffle the cards. Now, sometimes these things can be causing us stress, and that's why we're coming to someone to read cards for us. Sometimes we're in physical pain. Sometimes there's just energies that we're ready to release. If that is the case for you today, Libra, I invite you to gently breathe through those energies. So as you inhale, draw in those delicious oxygen molecules. Allow them to infiltrate every cell and fiber of your being. And that will have the effect of drawing source energy deep into your body. And then we're going to use the electron transport chain. So one of the electrons from that oxygen molecule is going to bounce right through the electron transport chain in your mitochondria. And that's going to have the effect of pushing all of that lower vibrational energy or discomfort or things that you're ready to let go of right through to the end point where we're going to be getting rid of that CO2 molecule. And you're just going to release and exhale that CO2. And all of those energies will be returned to source and they will be transmuted. All right, Libra. Deal out those cards for you, and then I will draw these cards against humanity. These are funny cards. I'm excited to read them to you. I'll put down your timestamp here. And we can get started. Libra, here in the past for you, we have the card of premonition. And you can see that these two people are working together. Perhaps they are scrying together, although we don't see any scrying tools present. We just see the one figure here. Excuse me. In front, and then the person standing behind them is holding what looks like it could be a shen, which is a loop of rope that symbolizes eternity. Additionally, we have two yorei up here at the top, pointing in both directions, and that shows that time moves linearly in both directions. This is also Uranian energy. So we're not looking at the kind of psychic intuition that comes with Neptunian energy, what we're looking at is the foresight that comes from using specific tools and the occult sciences. There's more of a practical side to it. We're using more analytical tools in conjunction with our spiritual intuition. This card is in the upright and it is in the past. So you might have started this practice of divination at some point in the past and are continuing it into the current situation. So you're still obtaining new information about the future, but this is something that you had started doing in the past. And you might be working with a partner on this. We do have the card of cooperation here in the place of the significator, such that this is Neptunian energy. So there are aspects of intuition here. There's aspects of communion with source energy. But most importantly, we have the connection between two people in a work setting where they are able to work in harmony. We see a symbiotic relationship depicted down here at the bottom of the card as well between this bird and this ox. So there might be for you at this time within your workplace a very symbiotic relationship between you and it can be one other person, but it could also be a whole team of people working together cooperatively. And you are working together cooperatively toward a very positive outcome for all. We have Saturn in Libra energy, the establishment of an equanimity. The star card is also about how you pour out your energies to others. So we have pouring out into one group here, pouring out into another group over here. And one's hopes and dreams being fulfilled. So you're working together with a group or with another person for those hopes and dreams to be fulfilled, and that perhaps is based on information received through premonition at some point in the past. Down here in the MMC Libra, you have transformation, which is the world card in this deck, and it is showing up in the reverse. This is also a Uranian energy, this time Uranus in its native sign of Aquarius. So novelty, the turnover into a new cycle. This can also have to do with social groups. These are the four sons of Horus. They can depict also the four fixed signs, the four cardinal directions, or even in a Kabbalistic sense, the four worlds stacked on top of one another. This harp player playing the music that causes the world to turn, the divine vibration that drives life in this realm. Now, because this card is showing up in the reverse, the ending, the culmination of this process is not yet complete. So we're headed for some very good things here. There might be some hopes and dreams that have already been fulfilled, but that the final outcome is not quite upon us yet. Here, from your perspective, we have a very similar card to what Gemini got, actually, in that we have the Hermit showing up in the reverse. Now, in this deck, the Hermit is Mars in Aries energy. So striking out upon one's own. You could almost see that as like the two signals out, the beacon in the distance. And that's kind of what the hermit represents, is that beacon in the distance, that that guidepost, that illumination of new ideas that you can provide after a certain communion with source energy and the illuminations that come with that. Then you shine that light out to the rest of the world. It's not the kind of direct communion that you would see with the Hierophant, however. The Hermit is still quite separate. Now, because this card is in the reverse, I could take that to mean for you at this time, Libra, that you do not have the resources, whether that's time or energy, to dedicate to that communion with source energy, and the solitude to meditate upon those revelations. So this could mean that you feel overwhelmed at work. You could want some time to yourself, even though this is a very productive environment for you with the cooperation card coming out. If you are not allowed time to yourself, that can be exhausting, especially if you are introverted in any way. And so you might be hoping that at some point this project will come to an end so that you will have more time to yourself. From an outside person's perspective looking in, we have this card about consummation. And this is Jupiterian energy of expansion. So here we have Osiris depicted here in front of this portal. He is not yet going through the portal. And the consummation would be, in this case, coming out of that torpor, that somnolent state. There's very much a similarity between this card in the reverse and some of the concepts from the movie The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, in which this figure is kind of in a torpor state. They might be hypnotized. They might have the potential to be controlled by others. So where others are seeing that about you, Libra, there might be a temptation to try to exploit your labor, because you are seen as a pawn, a tool, more so than you are being seen in your own humanity. Here in the future, we have the Passion card. I believe this is the god Benebjejet, who is one of the figures of the underworld. This card does not have the same connotations in this deck that it has in other decks where it's the Devil card. This would be Neptune in Leo energy. So a creative spark coming from the divine. This could possibly be Knum, but let me look it up in the book because I want to make sure that I'm telling you the right thing. Although there's a lot of overlap between some of these deities. Well, I was wrong on both accounts. This is apparently Amun-Ra appearing with a ram's head. So as you can see, there are several different deities that this could be. We have the Wasp scepter here showing that potency and that power and the divinity. So in the book here, it does say, Amen is depicted here with a ram's head, surmounted by a ram's horn headdress, with an ostrich-plumed sun disk and 2 uraeuses, that's the cobras. The female breasts attest to his role as a god of fertility. In one hand he holds the wasp scepter, and in the other a uraeus. Amen represented the male forces of generation and reproduction, and the ram symbolized fertility and virility. He was the husband of his mother, initiating and sustaining creation. His popularity was partially due to his compassionate fatherly nature, his protection of the weak against the strong, and his elevation of the just above the corrupt. Below the ram-headed figure is the hieroglyph to give, reflecting Amen's role as the giver of all life. So that would be this hieroglyph right here. So this card in the reverse can be about selfishness, about exploitation, and things like that. But there's also, because it's in the future position, the potential that it will be about the positive attributes, but that there are things that need to come to pass before this will take place. So things like passion, virility, power, lust, possibly even benevolence from a high-ranking person. So you can see it's a slightly different card in this deck than the Devil card, which represents our baser instincts. This does, in some ways, represent those things, but with more of an emphasis on the ability to use those things to manifest positively and to raise those vibrations. So the potential is definitely there for that in the future, and I think it's really going to depend on if you end up falling victim to these people who wish to exploit your labor, Libra. Here in the hopes and fears, we have the offering card, and that is in juxtaposition to where we see the hermit in the reverse in your perspectives on the situation. So this card about offering is paying tribute. This is a lunar energy. There is a cyclical aspect to paying tribute. Additionally, down below, we see this god figure whose head is turned around backwards, much as we saw in the Gemini reading with the unexpected card. So looking at hindsight, looking at what this benevolent leader has done in the past and meting out our grace in relation to that. I think that you're hoping for a situation where your loyalty and your tribute to this situation are recognized and rewarded. Obviously, with offering, it's slightly different because when you work a job, or when certain things are taking place in a family dynamic, there have to be like specific parameters. The thing with offering is that you are giving through benevolence. And I think that you want a situation where you can give to things through your own benevolence and not because of an obligation. and not to be exploited either. In the midheaven, so that is going to be the result of what we see here, that this isn't quite coming to a point of culmination. We have patrimony. Now, this is very similar to this offering card in that there is a tribute being paid based on previous gifts being given by that leader. Patrimony is also about tribute. It is about tribute to a patriarch. This is a solar energy. So we're not quite in your solar season yet, Libra, but it is right around the corner. And this patrimony might have to do with one's father. It might have to do with surrogate fatherhood as well. How do you see your relationship to your boss, for example? Have they become a surrogate for your father? Has the company that you work for become a surrogate to your father? How about the government? How about your landlord? Because I feel like the kind of relationship that you want to have with the power structure in your life is one of that's more similar to a parent and a child, which is reasonable, I think. It's not necessarily realistic, but it is reasonable, and it does imply that care is being paid in return to you. So not necessarily as simplistic as that you're looking for a surrogate father. I don't think that's the case. But I do think that the relationship that you wish to have with the power structures in your life, whether that's your employer or your landlord or the government, that you desire from them a much more paternal level of support. And that is going to be a result of whatever this project is, kind of being dragged out. So this very much looks like it could be an employment type reading, that every time there are expectations set for you by a boss, that then when you meet those expectations, more is piled on. And that from your perspective on the situation and the perspective of your direct collaborators, everything is going really great at this company. It's just that they're going to try to push you as far as they can. The final outcome for this reading is the Lover's card in the reverse. And here we have Taurus in Virgo energy. Things having to do with love, beauty, delight. And you can see that on this particular card, there's much more of an implication of choice being made. This is in opposition to where we see someone wanting to try to control you like a puppet, right? That perhaps it's not your choice to make in a particular situation. That perhaps that choice is being made for you, and the choice that you're able to make is whether to stay in a certain situation or whether to leave in favor of greener pastures. I do think that this is very much about the relationship between yourself and some kind of employer.
although it could be a family dynamic with one's father or a paternal figure, patriarch.
So this card's against humanity. It's going to be very interesting to read, Libra. Fun tip: when your man asks you for that, try surprising him with blank instead. So try surprising him with Viagra. That's a neat trick. Oh, you like that? Well, here, have some more. So rather than providing a solution, you would be providing more of the problem. Try surprising him with your weird brother instead. Ah, yes, the old switcheroo. Quite common in the fraternity culture. I believe they call it pinch hitting or something like that. But maybe it's time for you to allow them to find another substitution for you in that situation. Somebody who's even less well suited to the job. Try surprising him with synergistic management solutions. See, I think that this is the key to the reading overall, is that what is going on is that you need more synergistic management solutions. But that's going to depend on the relationship that you, Libra, have with the actual leadership of the company and not just the in-betweens and the managers who often can be the worst when it comes to human rights violations because they're receiving these orders from the higher ups and are not quite equipped to execute as would be the best for everyone involved. So now I'm going to move on to the sign of Aquarius. And it is apparent to me that the air sign readings today are going to be quite long.
So Aquarius, if you would, go ahead and set your intention for the reading and allow any thoughts or ideas associated with that intention to rise up to the forefront of your mind. And just wait there patiently while I deal out the cards. Now, Aquarius. Sometimes you might feel, stress or anxiety associated with what you've come here for the reading today. You might just be anxious overall. And you might even be in physical discomfort. Now, if that's the case, I invite you to gently breathe through those energies. So as you inhale, draw in oxygen, which is going to have the effect of bringing source energy into your body. Allow that oxygen to infiltrate your cells and go deep within your electron transport chain. And that electron from that oxygen molecule is going to bounce right through your electron transport chain, which is going to have the effect of pushing all of that lower vibrational energy, things that you would like to let go of. It's going to have the effect of pushing that right out into that final CO2 molecule, and you're just going to release that with your breath, and it will return to source, and it will be transmuted. So I'm going to document your timestamp, and then we can get started. So here in the past for you, Aquarius, we do have a depiction of a scene from the Duat, which is the underworld, where a soul has fragmented from the ego into the superego and the id. And we can tell that because we have the eye depicting vision, and then we also have the was scepter over here, which represents power. So those two halves splitting and having to go their separate ways in the underworld, and there being confusion around that. That is a plutonic energy. So there might have been a period of time for you in the recent past, Aquarius, that was very uncertain, and perhaps you felt fragmented by it. But that is in the past now, and we're moving on into the current situation. Here we have communion. So this card can be about marriage. It is Mars energy, so there's an action being taken. It can also be about business contracts or other ways in which people come together in an establishing way. And this is being crossed by the tower, the obelisk. In this deck, a mercurial energy in Virgo. So these people falling down from the tower, perhaps there was some part of their daily routine that was crucial that they forgot to execute. Maybe you have to turn off the gas, or else it attracts lightning. There could be a lot of destruction going on all around you at this time, but in a juxtaposition to that, that you are coming together either with another person, maybe in a relationship or a marriage, or you're getting a new job and you're signing contracts related to that. There could be a few different things going on for you right now, but they might be happening in a very chaotic and turbulent environment. Down here in the Imam Silai, we have dissension, and it's reversed. So again, we have mercurial energies, and we have the heart down here at the bottom. Everybody feels like they're following their heart, but everybody's hearts are going in different directions. However, because this card is in the reverse, and it's down here in a foundational position, so a lot of future events are going to be based around the activities that are going on around this card. You could be clearing up, excuse me, you could be clearing up a lot of misunderstanding with other people right now, clearing up your differences of opinion, clearing up any polarization between yourself and others, especially if there were other people involved in this situation in the past. From your perspective, Aquarius, we have the unforeseen. So this is a little bit like the unexpected. That is what she said. This is a Venus energy, though. So it's a more receptive energy. You can see that this person willfully has their hand over their eyes. So they are the one blocking out any external stimuli that might give them information about what's going on around them. And we see the solar bark represented by this disc with the uraei. We see that passing through the body of Nut, showing us the sun does rise and set in the same direction every day. So there are things that can be assumed, but there can also be dangers that we're not aware of. You see in this one, the scorpion is not like shooting poison at his feet, but the stinger is a lot closer to his feet in this card than it was in the unexpected. There's kind of a willful ignorance involved in the unforeseen, right? He's got his hand over his eyes. So you might be refusing to see certain things about the current situation, Aquarius. From another person's perspective, looking into the situation, we have alliance. Now, this is also a Venus card. And I do think that this is related to that communion. So, alliance is very similar to communion. It's a little less formal. So, other people might be coming together with you at this time, and maybe it's a very serious commitment, but neither one of you is really looking at it that way. You're mostly looking at it as a means of patching up uh, and reconciling vastly differing opinions. Here in the future, we have confusion, and it's showing up in the reverse. So the potential is there for more confusion in the future. The potential is also there for less confusion. This person is not watching where they're going. They are looking over their shoulder because that is what this baboon representation of the god Thoth is doing. But he's kind of holding up his hands in this defensive gesture against the past. It's almost as if the past is creeping up on this figure. Um, and this would be a mercurial energy. Now, I see this as very similar to some of these other cards, right? We've already had the unforeseen, we've also had uncertainty. And the fragmenting of the uncertainty card, uh, that's reconciliation of different parts of the self. It's very much like this dissension as well, where there might be differing opinions and things like that that need to be reconciled. They don't necessarily have to come to a place of agreement, but there have to be like some understandings about things. In this particular case, there's like a willful refusal to look forward. Here, the person has their hand over their eyes, but here, the person has their head turned around. This one is much more distracted. This one is a very willful decision to not look forward. So, my advice to you for that future position, even though there is a certain amount of confusion potential, keeping your eyes facing forward. You don't necessarily need to put on the blinders, but that, especially in the current situation, we have this tower moment going on, even though you are in the process of coming together with another person or a group of people, possibly. If it could be a romantic situation, but it could be an employment situation, just how the cards are coming out. That confusion is choice. There's also the possibility for things to be reconciled and made much more simple. Here in your hopes and fears, we have veneration. And this is a Uranian energy. We're looking at communion with the higher power here and showing proper respect to that higher power. And where this is in juxtaposition to this card about this willful ignorance.
Oh, hi, Vaulted ASMR. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming by. Good morning.
There's a juxtaposition here between this willful ignorance and perhaps either being afraid that you're not showing proper respect to the higher power. You could feel abandoned by the higher power, but that's just your perception. Or you could be feeling like you haven't had the opportunity to show proper tribute and commune with that higher power, perhaps because of some of the things going on. But veneration is all about showing that respect, and where it's showing up in the reverse there, you might feel like for whatever reason you're not able to do that at this time, but it seems more from the cards like it's a willful choice. Up here in the midheaven. So this is going to be the result of all of this air being cleared by dissension in the reverse in the Imam Silai. We have a really good card showing up there to tie up all these loose ends. We have the Temperance card, Aquarius. And in this deck, that is Jupiter in Cancer. So an expansion of the parity between people emotionally. And in fact, we see this figure pouring that emotional substance back and forth between the two vessels. Perhaps that is a form of equalization. Perhaps that is the way that people come to understand each other, as being these vessels for substance and pouring that substance back and forth until that reconciliation is reached. Your final outcome here, Aquarius, is in juxtaposition to where we have the Alliance card. Someone else's perspective on the situation is that people are coming together in alliance. It can be romantic, but it can also be a business arrangement. And the card that we have juxtaposed is the Hostility card in the reverse. And this is a Saturnian energy. So even though hostility, if I were doing the correspondences, I would have made this a Martian card. I would have given this Mars energy. Here we're seeing hostility from the perspective that it causes things to become stuck, stagnant, perhaps even cause death. So where this card is in the reverse, there is pushing hostility out of situations. We have these cards showing up in reverse in relation to conflict. So the potential for the conflict is there, but it looks like, Aquarius, you are effectively, with the help of the people around you, clearing up confusion and pushing this conflict out of the situation.
So now I'm going to move on to the Cards Against Humanity portion of the reading, which I think adds an extra layer of elucidation and is a little bit of fun as well. music. Shock G would like to thank you for your service on this front, sir. During sex, I like to think about surprise sex. Now, surprise sex just means that you weren't expecting it. It doesn't mean that it wasn't consensual. I just want to clear that up. During sex, I like to think about expecting a burp and vomiting on the floor. So, during this time, Aquarius, I think every time you're expecting a burp, it's going to be a burp. And rather than vomiting on the floor, you're able to hold it together. That is going to conclude the air sign readings for this week. I will be going now over to the members side of the channel to do the crystal scrying. If that is something that interests you, you're cordially invited. But your presence here on the channel is greatly appreciated in whatever form it takes. Whether that's likes, sharing, subscribing, ringing the little bell so you know when I go live, commenting in the live chat or on the videos themselves, all those things, even just your views, mean a lot to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, Pat Birth Control, of course. It's good to see you. And until we meet again, I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.